All right, welcome to Reinventing Mental Health, where we explore the root causes for mental health. Today, we have with us Dr. Kendra Becker from KB Therapeutics, and we are going to be exploring work life balance and how stress impacts the brain and the body. Thank you, Dr. Becker, for joining us today. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
I'm so happy to see you. Okay, so I'm just going to dive right in. You and I have talked a few times about how, stress impacts the lives of the clients that we are working with, and then also us as providers. So for our viewers, why is work-life balance so critical for mental and physical health? And what happens in the brain when we're constantly overworked and overstressed?
So, from a physiologic standpoint, of course, we're always talking about cortisol, right? So high levels of cortisol increase high levels of blood sugar. That can create an insulin resistance or a diabetes type phenomenon in the body. Okay. However, high levels, so that's the physiologic standpoint, high levels of sugar damages cells, period, end of story. But the longer version of that, of course, is the fact that high levels of cortisol shut off your neocortex and basically turn you into a caveman. Because when you're a caveman and you're fighting for your life every second, you are constantly running from a dinosaur. And that's what cortisol does. It gives you the opportunity to either fight or run, fight or flight. So if we are living in our first world with our first world problems and our body doesn't differentiate between running from a pterodactyl or not being able to pay your mortgage on time, the same physiologic stuff happens in the brain. So you shut off your neocortex, you have no short-term memory, your sleep is crap, you have fat in the middle, you're basically intolerant with just about everything, and you have no coping skills. It's not a way to live. The sad thing is a good amount of people in America live that way on a daily basis.
Yeah, we see that in kids. I have kids that are in elementary school that come in, and they're so stressed out and they're so anxious about tests or social situations, or mom and dad had a fight last night and I'm not really sure, what's going on at home. So we see that across the age span.
Yep. Absolutely. It's crazy.
Can you walk us through how stress hormones like cortisol affect the body in the short term and why that feels so overwhelming and gives us that constant sense of running from the dinosaur?
So what happens is the cortisol is secreted from your adrenals. It literally, for somebody who's under a lot of stress, you probably have had this experience where you feel the cortisol climbing up your back. And I remember, a funny story is, I went to nursing school and before I became a doctor, and I did what was called an accelerated transfer track. So I did 4 years of school in 2.5 years, which when you're in your 20s, seems like a piece of cake, right? So I get out of school, I move across the country, I get a job in a field that I'd never worked in before, and it was a high stress job. I had no idea how much stress I was under until I started healing my body. And I remember I was on the treadmill at the gym one day and I felt the cortisol go up my back. And I was like, oh my gosh, it was the first time I had actually felt it in an appropriate situation after a number of years. And I was like, this is how healthy people feel. And if you're not a healthy person or if you're out of balance, you feel that cortisol climb up your back when you're trying to sleep. When somebody cuts you off on the highway and it's just, you have an overreaction to things that should be very minor because your body can't differentiate between the major and the minor stress because you're operating at a place where you are constantly under a high level of stress.
Well, and so you're talking about all of those transitions too. All of those transitions were positive, happy things for you, but our brain doesn't always identify it that way. And our body can feel like this is a huge traumatic, stressful event, even though it's happy. You got the job, you got the house, you got married, all of those things, those are additional stresses. And that's how our brain and our body are interpreting them.
Right. And if you have been under stress for a long period of time, sometimes you can't even differentiate between the happiness and the joy and the sadness and the fear. It all feels the same, which, as you know, is what brings people into your office or into a psychiatrist's office to get medicated.
Absolutely.
So
So, in the work that you're doing, what are some surprising ways that chronic stress is rewiring the brain or disrupting hormones over time?
So obviously, the big thing is, of course, fertility, right? It profoundly affects fertility in both men and women. It certainly can stunt growth in small children. It can impair healing in individuals. It affects sleep. It affects weight loss. It affects even exercise performance in some cases. So it affects desires and cravings for essentials in life, food, sex, joy, physical contact with other humans. So there's a variety of ways that it can affect you. And if you're not aware of it, it can creep up on you. And as it creeps up on you and starts to be part of what is your normal physiologic day, it ends up being something that you have to actually address and heal from. Stress illness.
Mm-hmm. So in our practice with the neurofeedback, we get people that come in and they're saying I'm anxious and I'm depressed, but then we do a brain map and we see they haven't been getting adequate sleep. Their brain is actually smaller because as you're lacking in sleep, your brain is actually shrinking. And then what we've heard in a few different conversations is men telling us that their testosterone levels have dropped. And I've talked to a few physicians who actually say that when you're not getting sleep, your testicles actually are shrinking as well. So
Mm-hmm.
those are all effects that people aren't paying attention to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you make a very good point. I mean, this week alone, I see, as you know, I only have about 10% of my practice is men. The rest is women and children. And the only men I see is erectile dysfunction. And they only come in because their wives have dragged them in. And I think 4 out of the 6 men that I saw within the last week all had erectile dysfunction. And I'm like, it's just information I don't want. But I know, and they're high level executives. They're not old guys. They don't have a cardiac history. They're not diabetic. They're just under so much physiologic stress that when you're running from the dinosaur, making love to your wife is the last thing that's going to be on your priority list.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And your brain just can't seem to get out of that either. But I see that in women as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So, how does long term stress contribute to serious health issues like heart disease, anxiety disorders, and even accelerated aging? And that's an interesting one that keeps coming up recently.
Yeah. Yes, yes, and yes. Because if you are under a lot of stress, again, cortisol, remember, is supposed to be something that happens in bursts for short periods of time. If your cells have a lot of long-term exposure to cortisol, they're going to be damaged. You're going to rapidly age because if you need cortisol to run from a dinosaur, you're going to basically throw away those cells. If you operate or live in a land of always running from the dinosaur, your cells are always going to be thrown away, which is basically what's considered rapid aging. And that, again, like I said, it literally steals your joy.
It absolutely does. Now, where do you see community in helping to calm down that anxiety and stress and help with longevity, like what we're seeing in all of these blue zone studies?
Well, I think it is the community, right? Because when you share your burdens, whether it's with your partner or your best friend or your neighbor or whatever, it always feels like the burden is less. So, I mean, this is where it's one thing I really feel like COVID did for us. And, if you're looking at it from a positive spin, is it really made you find your tribe. And those people you should continue to rely on. The biggest problem is life is easy here in America. And so if your life is easy and you can go to the store and buy something in a package to eat and call a guy to mow your lawn and your trash gets picked up every Tuesday or whatever it is, there isn't a lot of sense of community because you're leaning on people for doing things that are hard or challenging. You're just relying on the system.
Right. So I know that, we live in a beautiful neighborhood here in Texas, but I don't know the people that live across the street from me. I've actually never seen them outside. We actually were talking the other day, there was garbage cans in front of the house. We were like, oh, somebody actually does live there.
Yep.
We know the two neighbors on both sides. But when I was a kid, we knew everybody in the neighborhood. And as a child, I knew that if there was trouble, it was the closest house that I could get to is where I needed to go.
Yep. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have to say, living out in the country, we do rely on our neighbors. I have the good fortune of that, and I like that community aspect, even though our properties are farther apart. But there are, I know people in these planned community neighborhoods where the houses are right next door to each other that are similar to you, that have never seen their neighbors outside, have never seen them cut the grass. They don't have a garden. They don't even go to the mailbox.
Yep. No, that we definitely see. We've got the one neighbor. We talk to them frequently. They've got a swimming pool. They have kids around the same age as us. The other neighbors, their children are much younger, but their senior mother is living with them. So, we've had quite a few conversations with them. But, again, when I was a kid, we lived next door to my grandparents, and all of our family was, within a mile. We could walk to houses, and we don't live in that world anymore.
Yep. I know. And that's unfortunate. We need to get back to that a little bit, I have to say.
We do. I agree with you. I definitely see that. And all those blue zone studies are really pointing to that too, where they're saying that it's really about that. It all goes back to that sense of community and knowing who those people are and just sharing, not only your burdens, but your joys with these people.
Absolutely. Which also lowers cortisol.
Yep.
So.
Are there specific signs or symptoms that we should watch for to know when stress is starting to take a toll on our brain or body?
So I would say probably the first thing is alteration in sleep. And the thing is as humans, we try to be super resilient. And so you're not realizing how long these issues are going on until they're going on for too long. So as much as I hate the technology, I do think things like an Oura Ring or even an Apple Watch, at least for short periods of time, can allow you to be kind of honest with yourself about your quality of sleep. I think that's a really good indicator. And also too, like different kind of cravings, whether you're craving, you come home from work and it's every day is a terrible day, that you get in bed earlier and earlier, or cravings for sugar, or cravings to be away from whatever it is your offending substance. I don't want to go home, so I'll just go to the gym for 5 hours, because that's also part of an addiction.
Absolutely. Okay. So how do factors, like we keep touching on sleep, and sleep, again, is something that we see in the practice so regularly. And we have people that come into the practice and they tell us, they're only getting 4 hours of sleep a night. And in some instances, they think that they've got plenty of energy throughout the day. But then when I'm talking to them, they've got major dips in energy throughout the day. And they are reaching for things like sugar, more caffeine, all of those things to help give themselves the energy that they're lacking from sleep. So, how does sleep influence our ability to manage stress and maintain hormonal balance?
Well, sleep is the period of time that your body is fully dedicated to repair. So without that full dedication to repair, you're just kind of slapping a Band-Aid on it.
Right.
So the Band-Aid is caffeine or alcohol or B vitamins even, can be a Band-Aid in some cases where people are using that as an energy support. So the quality of sleep, I don't get too intense about quantity, because that's different for everybody, because our cells all rejuvenate at a different level or a different time period. But the quality of sleep is very important, and that is not much different from human to human.
So I know you were saying you don't care for like the Auras or the Apple Watches, but they're good for getting that information on your sleep. So if somebody is using one of those, what is the sleep score that they should be shooting for? And what are some things inside of those apps that they should note are areas of concern?
So you want to look for like a consistent cycle of REM sleep and a consistent cycle of light sleep. So it almost should look like a parabola. And again, the numbers really are more based off of the hours of sleep. But if we have a nice parabola where you're in REM, which is the healing sleep, and then out of REM as you kind of get ready for your next cycle. And I think what is recommended, and I could be wrong, I think it's 3 REM cycles that's considered nourishing. I could be wrong on that.
Okay. Yep. So can you share a success story of someone who transformed their health by addressing work-life balance and stress?
If I could, I'd be out of business, I think. I think it's I think it's a continuum, and it's an ever evolving challenge and process, and there's nothing we can do as humans to we can't, like, as doctors, we can't eliminate the stress in your life. What we can do is help give you a skill set or a tool basket to be able to allow your body to manage the stress better from a cellular perspective.
So what are some tools that you would put in that tool basket?
So I use something called heart math, which is basically diaphragmatic breathing. I
Mhm.
recommend 5 minutes a day, twice a day, of either doing a rebounder or yoga. You know, people don't like the word yoga, so some sort of stretching, lymphatic stretching. Those things I think are really good. I love an occasional charcoal cleanse. I love lemon water. I love an Epsom salt bath. Those are all things that can be really, really helpful with lowering cortisol and healing the damage from high levels of cortisol.
Now, where do you see technology playing a role, like with the constant notifications and working from home, and how that's disrupting work-life balance and stress levels?
So it's, the likes and the pings and all that is a dopamine hit. So if your dopamine levels are low, then you're going to have a problem with not being able to separate the you know what goes on your screen and what goes on your life. So doing other things to get your dopamine levels are really helpful. Horseback riding, just saying, or spending time with animals can get your dopamine up. Being by the ocean gets your dopamine up. I mean, there's a variety of things. What they call forest bathing,
Mhm.
being in nature, all helps bring your dopamine levels up.
Yeah, I love all those things.
Yeah.
Okay, so looking forward, what's one thing we can all do today to protect our brain and body from the long-term effects of stress?
The easiest and most important thing, I
Mhm.
think, is really deep breathing. And if you are mindful about deep breathing and you're sitting at your desk and you realize you set a watch, you have an app, whatever it is, and you realize that you haven't had, 5 minutes of deep breathing and that your shoulders are in your ears, and just sitting there for 5 minutes and doing some deep breaths and not looking at your screen and tuning out the nonsense in your life can be very, very helpful. That, I think, is one of the main underused tools that we have as humans.
Absolutely. There's so much to deep breathing and how it regulates your entire nervous system.
Yep, absolutely.
Now, we have people ask us all the time about vitamins and supplements that can support them while they're going through adrenal fatigue. Are there any that you recommend or that you think are just overhyped?
So I think it's very individual. With everybody is different. Their healing trajectory is very different, and their level of imbalance is very different. Some vitamins that can be helpful overall when looking at adrenal fatigue or looking to rejuvenate adrenals are, of course, methylated B vitamins. That's a number one. I also think there's a whole handful of what we call adaptogens or adaptogenic herbs. It's never a one size fits all approach. I like holy basil. Ashwagandha can be really helpful. Shazandra can be really helpful. Skullcap can be really helpful. And that is kind of more an individualized thing. And in some cases, it can be a trial and error.
Oh yeah, that's true with all supplements and
Yeah,
homeopathy. So,
for
okay.
sure.
So if anybody wants to reach out to you to get more information or to work with you on any medical concerns that they have, how can they reach you?
You can, my website crashed the other day due to a post that I put on Facebook. It's back up and running. But you can find me on my website, which is drkendrabecker.com. You can also find me on social. On Facebook, I'm Dr. Kendra Becker. And I will say it, since Trump and some of the decrease in censorship, I have not been banned, blocked, or put in timeout. So you can reach me on Facebook, or you can find me on Instagram, also under Dr. Kendra Becker.
Yep, the some of us are were earning badges on how frequently we were getting banned.
Yes, we were.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Becker, for joining us today. For all of our followers, please like and share. And we hope to see you again soon.